asking questions. We'll ask you to type your questions in, and you do that by using the chat icon, which is the speech box in the middle of your screen at the bottom. So if you click on this, it'll open up a chat box on the right hand side of your screen. At the bottom of that chat box, there'll be a small box where you can put in comments, observations. If you do that and then press enter, that will send it, and it'll be shared by everyone. And what we'll do is we'll pick up any questions you've got, any comments. We'll pick them up off that chat. So use that to talk to us, please. And from my screen, I can't see who's here. I don't know what you can see, but it'd be really good to know that people are here. If you can just use the chat button now and just say who you are. So just type in, who you are and that you're here. And finally, we plan to record the meeting so that people who aren't able to attend or who are not particularly comfortable using Zoom can still find out what's happening. So I'd ask you to bear that in mind. And if you don't want to be sort of seen, you can, on the video icon on the bottom of the screen, you can click on that to unvideo yourself. And obviously, if you don't want to ask any questions or anything, then nobody will know that you're here. So that's the housekeeping sort of thing. So everybody's happy with that. We'll move on. So this is the first one of these 4 forums that we're doing in the next 2 days. And essentially, it's about updating everybody on what's happening with the council's approach to COVID-19 and the locality hub model that's been adopted locally as a way of dealing with the needs of local people and addressing sort of the issues arising from COVID-19. So the idea of this forum is to let everybody know how that model is working, how the model has been set up, and then we can look further afterwards about how the wider sector can be involved. And also, One Walsall want to update you on the work we're doing and how we can still support you in these difficult times. For instance, I'm speaking to you now from my home in Stafford, and I know that you're all sort of engaging, most of you from your home venues. So we're all spread across the West Midlands. So it is bizarre that we're working in this way, but I think this is something we're going to have to get used to over the forthcoming months. So yeah, it's interesting times. So first of all, the hub that's delivering the services in the West is the Old Hall People's Partnership, and they're an established community association who've operated in the West for many years. Unfortunately, they're not able to join us today because of work commitments, but I have spoken to them in the last couple of days to find out exactly what they do, and I can feed that back to you now. So essentially, the hubs are using the old Making Connections model, which you may be familiar with. So the majority of referrals they receive are coming via a single point of contact with no 121 number that goes directly to the fire service. All callers' needs and localities are identified through the fire service, and then the information is passed on to the appropriate hub. The hub also receives referrals from mental health teams, leaving care teams and hospital discharge teams, as well as self-referrals from individuals who were previously supported through the centre. At Old Hall, they're open 6 days a week, so they're open on Saturdays as well, just closed on a Sunday. So they are accessible a lot of the time to meet and respond to people almost immediately. And for all the clients that they're working with, they're keeping detailed records on people accessing the support and the type of services that they're accessing. And that might be useful information. I don't know how that information is going to be used in the future, but it'll be a pinpoint those people in the community who are vulnerable. Some of those will already be known by services, but I suspect some may not have been known in the past. So what services do Old Hall People's Partnership provide? First of all, they provide free food parcels to a list of regulars and deliver these to the clients' homes. Also in Walsall, you'll be aware that Sneed Community Centre is the central location now for food parcels for those people who are being sheltered. And that is a scheme that's sort of funded directly through government. At Old Hall, they have volunteers who provide a prescription collect and delivery service. So people requiring prescriptions can call Old Hall. They will go and collect the prescriptions from the doctors, get the medicines, and then deliver the medicines back to the client. They run a befriending service. So most people receive a call once a week, but if the caller identifies that the person is in significant stress, they can arrange for calls to be made twice a week to provide additional reassurance. I know something One Walsall is keen on is looking to see how we can increase capacity of some of these befriending schemes, because in the current climate, one call a week may not be necessary if people are particularly stuck inside the rest of the time and can't meet anybody else. Also, Old Hall provides support around money and benefit advice, but for the more complicated cases, they refer people on to specialist agencies. A bit more additional information about the work that Old Hall do. They don't run a paid service for shopping, but can refer people who need that service to organisations that do. They work very closely with other organisations in the West, including Darlaston Town Hall, Willenhall Chart, Moxley People's Centre, etc. And to date, they've supported 629 individuals and an additional 50 through the befriending service. And they're getting new people registering all the time. So, you know, this is something that's quite massive. There's lots of people, obviously Walsall's a deprived area, lots of people who need support. And I suspect as the lockdown continues and whatever comes, when we come out of lockdown, there'll still be restrictions that I think will impose strains and tensions within families across the borough. So if anybody has got any questions, if you can start putting questions on, we can answer them. I intend to sort of answer questions at the end of each section. So has anybody got any questions around the work that Old Hall People's Partnership do? If you can you type those in and we'll try and pick those up.
Dave, it's Sarah from Walsall Council here. Can I just answer the question regarding the food parcels?
You're on mute, Dave.
Oh, I've been unmuted now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, I can't see any questions on my screen, but if there's a question, yes, if you can answer it or.
Yeah, it was just something Dee had raised about the food parcels. The work that Old Hall are doing is gone to Sneed. So at Sneed, Walsall Council have started a distribution centre for making food parcels, which are being distributed to the hubs and the satellite groups like Darlaston Town Hall, Willenhall Chart, to distribute, because we found that it was becoming more of a difficulty for the hubs to try and find the food to make food parcels themselves. So the council made the decision to take that role from the hub. So the council have their own distribution centre at Sneed. They're making the food parcels, and then we are giving them then to the hubs, and they distribute out them to residents who are in hardship. So it was just to clarify that.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. So, first of all, it's been a few weeks now since One Walsall has held its locality forums. And like everybody else, you know, things move on, and we've got a few new changes at the office. So just want to update you. So first of all, we've got a new interim chief executive, Davina Litton. For those of you, I'm sure most of you are aware that Alex Boyes left us at the end of March to move on to work at NAVCA, the National Association of Voluntary and Community Associations. So Davina is now our interim chief exec for the next 6 months. So Davina, do you want to just have a couple of words?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. You'll see on my screen that my name is Dee Litton. Everyone calls me Dee, although my full name is Davina. I prefer Dee. Just to emphasise, I'm not new to One Walsall. I started at the organisation last July, and I was previously working as CEO at Age UK Walsall for 10 years, so I'm not new to the borough by any means. The role that I'm taking on is purely interim. I won't be going for the permanent role. The permanent role is being discussed at board, and we've got a board meeting this Thursday, and the advert for the permanent role should be going out around the 18th of May, so we'll update everyone as and when the permanent role gets advertised. But yeah, as Dave said, happy to step in for the interim. Simply because of my knowledge of the borough, my knowledge of key stakeholders across the borough, and my previous experience as being a CEO at Age UK. So lovely to see so many people on today's meeting. Thanks for attending. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dee. And secondly, we've got a new post that we've recruited to. So we've got Leighton Alabi as our new dedicated funding officer. So Leighton, do you want to just say hello?
Hi. Thank you for the introduction, David.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Leighton Alabi. And I prefer it to be called Leighton instead of Leighton, which is my full name. I have been recruited as a funding officer because of my experience working with funders, and the hope is that I will be able to give a funder's perspective when I'm helping people, or when I'm helping individuals or organizations tap into funding. I can help advise people on what funders would be looking for and put that on paper for them. I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll hear from Leighton a little bit later. She's got a few slides to present on funding. So I'm sure, as you'll all be aware, all One Walsall staff are now working from home, but by using Zoom, telephone and email, we're able to do the same range of services as we were able to when we were based in Bridge Street. We have had to prioritise some of our work due to the impact of COVID-19, and in particular, we've prioritised supporting the recruitment of volunteers and working with those organisations whose services are most impacted by the virus. So, can you bear with us if you haven't seen so much of us recently? We are still working hard. One of the things that we have been focusing on is recruiting volunteers to support partners with the work around COVID-19. And almost as soon as we had the lockdown, we liaised with the council and we did a big publicity effort to try and recruit volunteers. I think in our heart of hearts, we could never have believed that we've got as many people recruited as we have. And if you look on the slide here, you'll see that as at the 22nd of April, we had 619 people register an interest in volunteering, which is absolutely incredible. Out of those 619, we've received identification for 222. 55 have been sent for PNC checks, that's Police National Computer Checks, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And 71 people have actually been processed through that check. And we've got 222 individuals now ready for placement, and we've already placed 258 volunteers. And 33 people have removed themselves from the list, mainly due to concerns about members of the family who they're concerned might be at risk if they start volunteering. But those figures are absolutely tremendous for Walsall, and they say that we can't get volunteers. Well, I think this proves that we can, and people are willing to stand up and support themselves and their communities, when the need is there. So
Dave, if I could just interrupt, sorry. I think what we're already thinking about, and I have seen the questions about duplication of services from Haroon and Neil, so we will get back to that. We haven't ignored that. But I think what we're already talking about in terms of the volunteering and the volunteering response is how do we galvanise and coordinate this moving forward beyond COVID-19? Because the realisation is that people do come forward very quickly to volunteer. And even when people are going back to their normal lives, whatever that looks like post this lockdown, going back to work, whether full-time, part-time, kids back at school, all that kind of thing, we're really trying to think about how we utilise and, as I said, galvanise this volunteer response moving forward. So these volunteers don't get lost in the system, and actually they can be used moving forward to support organisations that may be struggling with befriending services or something like that. So we're not losing sight of the longer picture while we're dealing with the immediate response. Thanks, Dave. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. I think I've got a problem on my end, but I'm not seeing any of the questions. So I'll read through the rest of the volunteering slides, and then somebody will have to tell me what the questions are, because I'm not seeing any of them here. So I'll just quickly go through the process for volunteering for volunteers. So basically, everybody needs to register online at the One Walsall website, and I've got the address on the slide. And they go through to the piece on the website that says about we want to offer support, and then they can, from there there's a link that takes them through to a SurveyMonkey application form. Once they've completed the form, then as part of the form we'll ask them to send in some information. So if they've already got a DBS, it'll be a copy of the DBS and confirmation of ID and a photograph. If they haven't got a DBS already, then we will ask them to fill in some questions relating to the police national computer check. So this is a check on the national computer for the police to check that nobody's got a criminal record. It's similar to a DBS, but different. And once we've had all these checks in and we've got the evidence of ID and confirmation of address, then people are ready to be placed. So for those organisations who maybe are a bit reluctant to take on volunteers because they're not sure that these volunteers are safe, etc., everybody that we've dealt with will have been through a process, but to the best of our ability, these volunteers are safe to be placed in and working with vulnerable people. And before we organisations take on volunteers, we will provide every volunteer with a name badge. So you will know that that person has been through the One Walsall process. So what types of support can volunteers offer? So some can work in a community setting, e.g. a care home, although we're not recommending that volunteers necessarily provide direct care themselves, but they might be able to provide sort of care, preparing meals, things like that. We've got volunteers who are working in a health setting, again, helping out in hospitals with some sort of ancillary work, serving food, etc. We've got volunteer drivers, so there's lots of people who are in volunteer driving roles, again, collecting and dropping off food and prescriptions, etc. Some volunteers are involved, for instance, in packing food parcels. So I know we've got some volunteers placed at Sneed, logistics support and general admin. And finally, and telephones for remote befriending. So we've talked about this earlier. So contacting people who are isolated at home, maybe people who are having to be sheltered, and providing sort of some ongoing social engagement. This last area around the befriending is particularly one area where we haven't had as many requests for volunteers as we might have expected. Quite a few volunteers are keen to be involved in this type of work because they can do it remotely from home, so they're not putting themselves at risk. But we haven't had many organisations come forward, and I think I'd just like to mention that, you know, if you have got existing befriending services that maybe you contact people once a week, and you might be comfortable still delivering that, you know, giving the thought to, can you extend that 2 times a week? You know, people now can be very isolated, and one call a week may not be enough. It might have been sufficient in the past, but in the current climate, a couple of calls might be better. So, you know, if you are able to take on some volunteers, then this, you know, this will help with your capacity to provide that greater engagement. And as Dee mentioned earlier, it is about not losing these volunteers. The last thing we want is to recruit 600 people and then find people who walk away because they didn't have an opportunity, because they won't come back again. And this is the real opportunity to make the most of the volunteers whilst they're mindful to do that. So how do you access the volunteers? So you can email us at volunteering@onewalsall.org, and can you let us know how many volunteers you need, when you need them, and what sort of activities you want them to do. And then we will match appropriate volunteers with the requests that you have. And if you get volunteers and it doesn't work out, then please come back to us. You know, we've got a load of volunteers, and that might be the same for volunteers as well. They might be placed with you and find out it's not quite what they thought, and we would look to find them an alternative opportunity. So it is a bit of sort of try and see, but you know, we've got over 600, and a lot of these volunteers are people with highly skilled, you know, interesting backgrounds. So yeah, definitely you need to have a look and see if you can make use of them.
And I think, sorry, Dave, just coming in again, I do apologise. Just on that point, we're refining our processes for processing the volunteers, for want of a better word, all the time. So now what we'll be trying to incorporate into our processing process is to call you back a week or so after we've placed volunteers with you, just to check how things are going. Because as Dave said, we can do the DBS check, we can do the PNC check, we can issue the ID badge, but we can't guarantee quality or reliability or anything like that. We pass the contact details of those volunteers over to you, you contact them, and then assign them the roles that you want them to do, when you want them to do it, etc. And, you know, there's no disrespect to anyone out there, but sometimes things come up for volunteers and then they can't volunteer as much as they thought they could. So we will try and keep it in touch with you to see how those volunteers are doing. But please, once we've placed volunteers with you, we will issue you with the ID badges for those volunteers so they can be out and about on legitimate business, and we'll organise a convenient drop-off point to deliver those badges to. And then just keep in contact with us as we will with you. So again, we're just refining the process all the way down the line. And as Dave was alluding to, we've not had that great a call from voluntary and community organisations at the moment for our volunteer response. What we have worked very closely with are organisations like the local domiciliary care agencies, who are really pushed because of staff going under because of coronavirus, etc. They're supporting not with the dom care side, but with shopping calls, that kind of thing. And so, you know, there are calls for volunteers coming in from all over the patch. And I think, Dave, if we could just pause there to pick up the question that Haroon and Neil picked up on a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I can't see the question, Dee, sorry.
I'll read it out. Haroon has asked, is there a risk of duplication of services with other groups in terms of Old Hall People's Partnership? Which areas is Old Hall covering? And Neil picked that up as well. The council have leafleted households, as have our group at Chart Centre. So how are you going to coordinate services to avoid duplicate deliveries, befriending services? Our response on that, and Sarah will come in also, I'm sure, is that we respond to the volunteer ask, so wherever that's coming from. So for example, when the council asked for 200 volunteers to support with leaflet drops and food packing, we responded by sending the council those names, and then the council organised that piece of work. So whenever anyone comes to us asking for volunteers, we respond with the volunteers. We're not really coordinating, you know, the duplication of services. That happens without COVID. I think you'll agree, Dave, that there's always duplication of services. And I think we need to be smarter across all partners as to how we coordinate that and what's going on where. Sarah, I don't know whether you wanted to come in with anything from the council's perspective.
Yeah, that's fine. So within the West, there are more satellite groups than in some of the other areas, but they are working together. So they've got that relationship already. So within Darlaston All Active, they support residents within Darlaston and Moxley. Willenhall Chart have been supporting residents within Willenhall. And then Old Hall coordinate other areas within the East. They do talk to each other, and you know, they share resources, whether it's PPE equipment or if they've got a query about a resident, if they then they will check on each other's databases to see if they've had food parcels or support through other areas. But I suppose the council's message is, well, if somebody gets 2 food parcels, we prefer it to be that than them not get anything at all and go out. So I suppose with regards to duplication of services, they are supporting each other, they are talking, and providing advice and support to each other, and then they're doing a fantastic job.
And I think, as a kind of thanks Sarah for that input. I think as a backstop to that, if we feel that within a locality you want us to support with anything like these virtual forums between 2 or 3 organisations or whatever that might look like, we'd be more than happy to support that, just to get a feel of what's going on in the local area, if that needs a more formal platform to discuss, and that would definitely be a possibility moving forward. So again, keep that dialogue going with us as to the kind of support that you want moving forward. There was a question from Roseanne Wiltshire. Forward details to Living Waters Willenhall. They're providing phone befriending and are busy, I think. We're already on that. We're allocating volunteers today to that. So thank you for that. It's a useful piece of information. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dee. And I think, just to reiterate, the reason for holding this forum today is to try and find out what's going on, who's doing what, and where there is duplication, at least we can be aware of it and start looking at how we can sort of reduce those levels of duplication where activities are already taking place. So right, we'll move on to the next slide. And I just wanted to talk to you about some of the information that's available on the One Walsall website at the moment. So one of the things that we've got in place is a online real-time activity database. So we've got a spreadsheet where you can put on services that you're providing. If you need particular support at the moment, either in terms of volunteers or transport or whatever it is, you can put it on the spreadsheet, and hopefully other groups will see that, and where they're able to offer support, we'll get in touch with you. Equally, if you've got support that you can provide, you can put that on there, and groups who need support can, like vice versa, get in touch. So I'll just go through how you get onto that. So if you go onto the One Walsall website, you click here to contribute or view the database. You probably can't see this, but I'll so this is the instructions. So there's a database, so not only can you put information on there, but you can also search the database. If you're looking for somebody that's doing a particular service, you can click on there and say, put in the word of the service you're looking for, like befriending, and see who's doing befriending. And then this is the database. It's very small, I know that. So we're collecting things like the organisation's name, who they deliver services to, what they're doing, and any support that the organisation requires and support that the organisation can offer. So it's on the website, but everybody can access it. It's a Google Doc, so anybody clicking on the website can input information into that. All I would ask is you just be careful that you don't wipe everything off, because you can also do that as well. So as far as providing information at the moment, I think, as you all recognise, information around the response to COVID-19 is changing virtually on a daily basis, and information that was up to date a week ago can suddenly be out of date now. So it is a job to know what information to provide. So what we've tried to do is, in view of that, and to rationalise and make sure that we're providing you with the most up-to-date information, we're focusing on links to 2 key websites. So the first one is the gov.uk website, which is the government's website. So there's lots of information on there, I think, including things like furloughing of staff, emergency funding, grants available to businesses to keep them viable during the shutdown. So also those grants are applicable to small businesses, are equally applicable to small voluntary sector groups as well. So it's definitely worth looking there to see what's available. The other website that we recommend that you view is the National Council for Voluntary Organisations website, and they offer a whole host of information, including on protecting staff, volunteers and beneficiaries from being exposed to COVID-19, contingency planning, and understanding the financial implications of the COVID-19 virus. So again, it's a website that we recommend that you have a look at. Now I'm going to hand over now to Leighton. She's only received these slides this morning, so bear with her. I sort of dropped this on her somewhat, but she's going to talk through you a few slides on the funding arrangements and the funding situation at the moment.
Thanks, Dave. I'm sorry if I keep dipping into my notes. That's the only way I can sort of follow. So I've been updating the useful links page with COVID-related news. This has been sorry.
There's lots of interference at the moment. I don't know what it is, but you sound
a bit like a Dalek.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. I have no idea. Better now?
No.
You sound like a Dalek.
You really do. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Leighton, I'll go through the slides. If you want to add anything, you can add something in your Dalek voice later.
That's so funny.
Okay. So as far as funding is concerned, I think the first thing that we need to make clear is that most funders have taken a very relaxed approach to the impact of coronavirus, and they've allowed most fund holders to amend or change projects to respond to the needs presented by COVID-19. So for organisations, I think if you haven't already yet spoken to your funder, we recommend that you do that as a matter of urgency, because it may well be that they will allow you to amend services that you were previously providing, as long as the new service is supporting people around the COVID-19 virus. For lots of funders as well, most business as usual funding has been put on hold. I think the lottery have put their ordinary sort of applications on hold for 6 months, and the majority of funding available now is being targeted at supporting those affected by COVID-19. And I think it's what we need to just get across to you is it's not saying that the services you provide have to address COVID-19, but it's supporting people and their different needs now. So I think certainly services that are available online, services that deal with people's isolation are going to be the kind of things that they're looking to fund at the moment. So if you've got any ideas about delivering services, things like mental health, I think at the moment are going to be quite high on people's agenda. But again, it's using technology to address how you might do that. And I suppose for very old people, I was thinking myself earlier, it might be services that encourage people to write letters. A letter exchange, something as simple as that. I know in the old days, people used to look forward to receiving letters to find out what was happening. Maybe that's something we need to go back to and might, prove something that people can do, use some of their time to write letters, and maybe there's ideas of intergenerational work with letters and so on. So there's lots of ideas that, you could go for, but you need to use your imagination. So that's the general sort of with existing arrangements. A key thing I think that most people will be interested in is what's happening following the Chancellor's announcement of £750 support for UK charities. So he announced that a couple of weeks ago now, and 370 million are going to be provided to small, medium charities through the National Lottery Community Fund. And on the website for the National Lottery, it talks about supporting those delivering food, essential medicines, and providing financial advice. The majority of funding go to organisations with incomes under 1 million, with most grants likely to be up to £100,000. And the NLCF has said it's going to consider diversity and inclusion issues throughout its decision-making process. So it is about how can we target those minority communities who may feel even more excluded at this particular time. I did visit the website yesterday for the lottery, and there was nothing on there yet, but it does say that the information about the new funding and the application system that's going to be used will be up and running within the coming week. I think what we can say is the application system will be very much streamlined on a typical sort of regarding to do with the typical process that they use. So we won't be waiting months for a decision. I think decisions will be within weeks. I would say that the competition for this money is probably going to be absolutely massive. So organisations need to be prepared and thinking about ideas as we speak now, even before the funding's available. And obviously the last thing to say is that One Walsall's here for you to help you, support you in writing your bids. And obviously we've got Leighton now as a dedicated funding officer. So if you want to talk through ideas with us, with Leighton, we've still got Amy and Colin who can maybe help you with ideas. So please use us. And, you know, let's see if we can get as much of this £370 million into Walsall as we can. So just a couple of other things regarding funding. So as I mentioned a moment ago, the National Lottery Community Fund, all funding decisions for the next 6 months, including the lottery, including the money coming from government, will be targeted at COVID-19. So if you've got other projects, I think you need to be leaving that for the next 6 months. Heart of England Community Foundation have closed for normal business, and they're now just focusing on a new coronavirus resilience fund. And that fund is open to constituted groups who are providing, but not limited to, food banks or social eating projects, delivery of emergency food, stroke medicine parcels, street pastors or those engaging in outreach activities, and befriending services for the elderly or vulnerable. And crucially, the income limit for organisations able to bid into this fund is £250,000. So if your turnover is greater than £250,000, then you won't be able to apply. So it is very much targeted at those small grassroots groups. And you know, they particularly said in their blurb, targeting groups who find it difficult to access funding and have fewer internal resources. So if you're a small group who are struggling and looking to maybe develop your services at the moment, then this could well be a fund for you. But again, I reiterate that the competition is going to be hot for this. Everybody's going to be looking to get money at the same time. So I think you need to respond quickly. And again, One Walsall can support you in writing your bids.
Dave, can I just stop you there? Because a couple of questions have come through that I just want to reply on the text. Haroon, when you were talking about the National Lottery Fund, asked, is it charities only? Hope it extends to CICs. I'm presuming it does. It's all not-for-profit, voluntary and community.
I think it's not-for-profit, but I think as far as the government's money is concerned, I think we don't know exactly. I would imagine CICs will be included, but until they've put the information out and clarified exactly who is able to bid, we don't know. But obviously, as soon as we get that information, we will put that out on the website. We'll put out a dedicated email to that effect, so people will know straight away.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Neil Snook asked, there's a bit of a double up going on here with Haroon and Neil, it's quite sweet. Funding apps are a problem for our group at Chart as it's a voluntary setup, not registered charity or business. So we are unable to apply. Can One Walsall or other party apply on our behalf? Neil, that's a very valid question. Thank you for that. And that is something that we could have a conversation with you with. Regarding, it's just a word of caution here. Obviously, we are the infrastructure organisation, but we're also a very small team, so we have to manage what we say yes and no to. But actually, that is something that we've already started conversations with other larger organisations who've already said that they may be able to support if the work that you deliver fits in with that organisation's kind of overall mission statement and values, etc. So, for example, thinking of vulnerable adults and children with one charity I was talking to last week, that kind of thing. So that's a conversation to have with us, Neil, and I think we'd need that on a one-to-one, if that's okay, with the various charities that would need that support. Does that answer your question? Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Right, so just on to this next slide then. So National Lottery Heritage Fund, they've got opened up a new emergency fund. So there's £50 million available, and it's targeted at grants of between £3,000 and £50,000. And it's available to organisations across the full breadth of heritage, including historic sites, industrial and maritime heritage museums, libraries, archives, parks and gardens, etc. And they're giving priority to organisations where there is limited or no access to other sources of support, where heritage is most at risk, and where an organisation is at risk of severe financial crisis due to coronavirus. So again, there's funding there. So this is the next to last slide now, ultimate slide. So it's a question really over to you. So we just want to know now.
Okay. Am I sounding any better?
You are sounding better.
I had to sign out and sign back in, and it
Right.
helped.
Do you want to add anything, Leighton, to the?
Yes, just wanted to reiterate on the things you said, reminding people that I'm very happy to talk them through wherever they lack confidence and or they need help in just applying, because like Dave has mentioned, it is going to be very competitive and you just want to get there and get part of the money as soon as you can. I have been updating our useful links, and it would be very helpful if you go in there to kind of see what is out there outside of the few ones we've just mentioned, the major funders, gov.uk and NCBO and the rest of it. There are other funders out there on the useful links. I update that once a week, and I would also have to ask you to bear with us right now because the format is a bit funny and we're trying to get it up to scratch. So don't be too hard on us if things are not working the way you'd like, but send me an email if the link is broken or whatever. I'll try and address it as much as I can. And I think that's it from me.
Thanks, Leighton. I think Leighton started on the 1st of April. It wasn't an April Fool that we said you're working from home, and the strangest induction probably I've ever conducted and she's ever taken part in, so fair play. And just to reiterate the point about the useful website links on our website, we are updating that. It very quickly became an unwieldy document and an unwieldy link on our website. So it is a bit of a monster at the moment, and we're working with comms to get that rectified, and the work that Leighton's doing on a weekly basis. So if you go onto it now, please bear with us because that literally is changing and should have changed and becoming in a better format by the end of the week. Okay. And I think the thing I want to add, sorry Dave, you knew I'd do this, is that we are obviously in contact with key organisations across the borough, but also NAVCA, the National Association, and obviously we have a very good link there now with Alex Boyes, our former CEO, and a conversation with NAVCA's CEO last week, I think summed it up, saying that local organisations on the ground of all your rich shapes and sizes and diversity, etc. We're like the canary in the mines here. We see what's happening and get affected by what's happening far quicker than is fed up to government. And central government is obviously several weeks behind what's happening on the local level. So our links with the key organisations on the national basis is going to be critical here, and getting the information from you guys on the ground is also going to be absolutely key to enable us to inform the wider picture. I had a meeting with Eddie Hughes, MP for North Walsall a couple of weeks ago, and he was very keen to keep updated as to how the sector is being affected, because we know without a doubt that once we come out of this, whatever normal looks like is not going to be the normal we had before, and the landscape is going to be very different, and we are going to lose people along the way. And so just to reiterate what Dave was saying, if you're thinking about what you can do in response to the current situation and funding you could potentially go for, start formalising those thoughts now and having those conversations with us or relevant stakeholders or partners sooner rather than later, because it is going to be business critical. You can furlough staff, but you've still got your overheads in terms of if you've got rent and rates and everything else. So furloughing isn't the be all and end all. there is still pressure on the government to ease the issue of, if you furlough staff, they can't volunteer for your own organisation. There is continued pressure on the government in respect of that. And so, yeah, it is very different. It is very difficult. And we're going to come out of this with a very different landscape in front of us. And it's trying to pick up the positives, as we've already mentioned, in terms of the volunteering, in terms of the way we react as a sector and how flexible and adaptable we can be, are going to be some of the positives we take out of this. Sorry, Dave, I will try and shut up now.
Okay, so the last slide, it's a bit over to you really. So I think Dee summed it up there. So what are the biggest challenges that you're facing at the moment? And that could be in terms of, you know, how you're able to support service users who maybe struggle to use your services now. Probably thinking more of the elderly who maybe aren't as IT savvy as the rest of us. Issues around your capacity due to having to use new ways of working and social distancing. And finally, things around funding, loss of income generation activities, etc. from you. And as Dee said, you know, we're the canary in the mine. You're the canary in the mine. We need to get that feedback from you and able to feed it back up to the powers that be.
And I think another thing that's going to be absolutely key is mental health issues, domestic abuse issues, where, you know, people might not be coming forward at the moment for support because it's very, very difficult to do so within the households that they're living in, or they may not know how to access support. And I think post-lockdown, there's going to be a surge from a variety of kind of categories of service users that is really going to impact current providers and new providers coming onto the scene. And I think, you know, the statutory organisations are absolutely clear that this is going to be an issue moving forward. But mental health is a huge issue for people who may never have lived with mental health issues before, may struggle at the moment, etc., etc. And it's how we as a sector respond to that and think about services that may need to be in place, you know, once this kind of surge in referrals comes forward post-lockdown.
Okay, I can't see any questions, Dee, but I'm not getting them. Are there any questions at all? Do you know?
Sorry, there's one from Balbir. Are you able to go through the database chart, please? How to access, missed it. We'll send the information round, that'll be fine. And then Julie Pickering, lack of clarity about an exit strategy and how phased return looks, guidelines for how we can resume face-to-face support for those cannot access tech. Absolutely. It is very difficult when it's obviously going to be a staged return to normality at some point, but what those timescales are, obviously we don't know. And where face-to-face support is so important for people who don't have access to technology, again, I don't have the answer to that, to be honest. It's a very difficult thing to do. Whether people, you know, there may be someone who's the deaf community who are hard of hearing, who may not be able to, you know, answer the phone and they don't have access to technology. And then Neil, we are seeing an increase in demand for food parcels and envisage this to grow as finances hit and jobs cut increase. Sorry, Neil, was that an actual question or just a statement? You can come off mute if you want.
No, it's just a statement, Dee.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree. I think the pressure on services is going to increase over the coming weeks and months, as you say, because as financial pressures increase, then, you know, the pressures on everyone, you know, and that's not just for food parcels. It's going to be for people signing up to universal credit. It's going to be for, you know, emergency housing provision. It's going to be homelessness. It is huge, and it is something obviously the council are discussing in regular meetings on a daily basis. There was a question about the West Locality manager. That's been answered. It's Mike Greenfield. Roseanne Wiltshire, my colleague Mike Batchelor, unable to attend this meeting, but has coordinated Bridging the Gap in Walsall, in Willenhall. Funding as a charity shop now shut. Yeah, and increasing need for food bank provision. Okay. Okay, so again, it's about the pressure on people whose trading income has gone down, and if there's any way that you can apply for funding and we can support you with that, then absolutely. Street teams are funding for a 5-year community project to tackle exploitation in Walsall. and to provide early intervention. We're finding this difficult at the moment due to everyone in isolation. The project started April the 1st. I was in a meeting with Helen Matthews, who's the CEO of Street Teams, the other day, and obviously this kind of thing is really difficult. But again, as Dave said quite early on in the meeting, funders are being quite sympathetic in terms of being able to do business as normal during the current lockdown. Gail, okay. UC payments should be out by next week. Advance payments have already been accessed. This should hopefully reduce the food parcels. Okay, thank you, Balbia. Sorry, Sarah, did you want to add anything into some of the questions that have been asked? Sarah Oakley. Nope.
Yeah, I'm in
Sorry,
mute.
Sarah, sorry.
I'm still getting used to Zoom, and I'm doing it on my phone, so I'm trying to do it and then telling the children to be quiet. So yeah, I've got nothing. Yeah, nothing really to add. Yeah, Michael Greenfield is the locality manager for the West, so he has been supporting myself and the hubs, particularly at the start of the project when the hubs were having to source their own food to make the food parcel. So he was really instrumental in maintaining and getting links between different food providers, so supermarkets and wholesalers, and now we're starting to think about wellbeing packs going forward as well. So things like quiz books, colouring, craft activities. So that's going to be going forward now. Some of the other areas have started looking at that, but I think that's what we're going to be starting to look at, as well as we get a bit more into obviously lockdown, and people are starting to need activities, a bit more activities to do.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I think we're coming to the end of our time. So sorry, Dave, did you want to wrap up? I think. Yeah,
no, can I just thank everyone for participating? I'm sorry I couldn't see any of the questions. I don't quite know why that is, but yeah, thank you for your time. I think all we can say is thank you for attending and stay safe. And if you want to feedback what you thought about this meeting, please do so, because we do want to learn and do the best that we can and communicate with people in the best possible way. So any comments, please type them in so that we know what you think, and hopefully we'll get another meeting up and running within the next month to keep you updated. So thank you very much for your time. And
I think what we're going to try and do moving forward is maybe have category-specific forums as well, because as I mentioned earlier, the domestic abuse issue is high on everyone's agenda, and it may be that we have special guest speakers, for example, from Black Country Women's Aid and the police, etc., to discuss the work that they're already doing, and how this can be taken forward. On Friday, there was a very useful a series of 4 webinars for professionals that One Walsall supported as well, and it is again about looking about what we're doing now, but what we're going to have to be doing post lockdown when potential referrals increase. I'm seeing loads of questions popping up. I don't think we've got time to go through them at the moment. Yeah, Neil, you want to contact for discussion on funding? That can be myself and Lighton. So yeah, we'll be in contact with you if that's okay. Okay, Neil. Again, as Dave said, thanks to everyone for attending. A few hiccups throughout, but that's situation normal. And I think what this is also telling us is how we can work moving forward. Because the time I'm saving not traveling in between meetings is huge. So, and the green agenda and everything else. So I think, again, when we come out of this, there'll be some changes to the way we're all working. So thanks all, and we'll circulate the PowerPoints and we'll put it on our website, and we'll email you as well.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.